There's one thing that breaks through every defense a woman has, and it's not charm, not flattery, not clever words. It's truth, not just spoken truth, but embodied truth. Because if your mouth says the right thing, but your presence feels weak, she'll feel it, every time. But when your energy is aligned, you don't even need to speak. Your silence says everything. So ask yourself, are you trying to impress her? Or are you rooted in power so deeply, she can't look away? Silent gravity. There is a kind of man who says very little, but everything in him speaks. His words are not scripted. His compliments are not rehearsed. His presence, quiet as it may be, changes the rhythm of a room. Women don't fall for his lines. They fall into his calm. Because while most men chase connection with their mouth, this kind of man leads with his energy. And energy cannot be faked. Words are tools, but presence is a signal. It speaks long before your mouth opens. It shows in how you breathe, whether it's shallow or steady. It reveals itself in your posture, whether you stand with ease or fidget with tension. It echoes in your pauses, whether you're afraid of silence or command it like still water. This is why so many men struggle, not because they don't have something to say, but because they are disconnected from how they're saying it. Their voices are coated with need. Their bodies lean forward with hope. Their words carry the weight of wanting something. And the woman, whether she knows it consciously or not, senses that energy. She doesn't fall for it. She steps back from it. A woman is not just listening to your words, she is feeling your frequency. And if your frequency says, I need you to validate me, it doesn't matter how smooth your sentence is. She may smile, she may reply, but something inside her will not trust you. Not because you're bad, but because you're not grounded. And no woman can soften into a man who hasn't yet anchored into himself. Now consider the opposite. A man who has trained not just his body, but his breath, his attention, his internal rhythm. He's not trying to win her. He's not trying to prove anything. He has already won something greater, his own respect. So when he speaks, there's no rush. There's no sales pitch. He's not scanning her face to see if she liked his joke. He's not worried about saying the right thing. He is fully present in the moment, in his body, in the silence between each word. And because he is rooted, she feels safe. Not in a logical way, but in a primal, emotional, nervous system way. Women don't trust words, they trust energy. And energy does not lie. If you've spent your life trying to master language, but not mastering yourself, then you're still missing the point. Real magnetism is not something you project, it's something you become. It's in how still you remain when others get nervous. It's in how you listen not just to her words, but to the emotion beneath them. It's in how you can walk away without fear, not because you don't care, but because you've already decided not to abandon your center for anyone. That decision creates a current. That current is what she feels. That current is what pulls her in, not because you chased her, but because you stopped chasing anything outside of yourself. Presence is not about being perfect. It's about being fully where you are. That takes training. That takes solitude. That takes the discipline to face your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own patterns before you go trying to impress anyone else. If you can't sit in silence with yourself, you will never sit in silence with a woman without feeling awkward. If you can't hear your own breath, you'll never command hers. If you can't stop performing for approval, you'll keep attracting women who only mirror your neediness. Stop memorizing pickup lines. Stop rehearsing clever replies. Start building your inner stillness. Start slowing down your speech, not to sound powerful, but to become it. Begin walking like your time matters. Begin speaking like you're not afraid to be misunderstood. Begin looking at her not to win her over, but to see if her energy even belongs in your life. That reversal changes everything. When you speak from presence, your words carry weight. They land. They linger, not because they're dramatic, but because they're real. There's no desperation in them. Only clarity, and in a world addicted to noise, that kind of clarity is irresistible. So if you want to become unforgettable, don't try to be interesting. Become interested in yourself, in the moment, in truth. Speak less, feel more, lead with your breath. And she won't remember what you said, she'll remember how you made her feel. Rooted communication. There is a weight to words when they are spoken from stillness, not from emotion, not from impulse, but from the core. And that weight cannot be faked. It cannot be memorized. It can only be forged through repetition of awareness, of clarity, of self-honesty. Most men speak from the surface. They speak from the mind rushed, reactive, fragmented. But there is another kind of man, the one who has trained in silence, the one who knows his rhythm, the one who does not speak often, but when he does, the world around him shifts. This man does not raise his voice. He lowers the noise of the room. His presence speaks before his lips move. And when he speaks, the sentence lands not just in the ear, but in the body of the listener. You see, it is not the words themselves that carry power, it is the certainty behind them. It is the absence of need, the absence of performance. When a man can sit across from a woman, breathe deeply, and speak the truth of his path without apology, it awakens something primal in her. She feels it not as pressure, but as grounding. He doesn't say much, but when he says, "I don't chase chaos," she believes him. Not because he repeated it, not because he forced it, but because his energy has no room for disorder. His life already reflects that discipline. His home reflects it. His time reflects it, and his boundaries reflect it. This kind of communication is not dominance, it is direction. There is no force in it. There is no convincing. It is not used to overpower but to center, and the feminine energy naturally softens in the presence of that center, not because it's trying to please, but because it finally feels safe enough to rest. The nervous system of a woman is tuned to notice inconsistency. She doesn't need to know your resume. She can feel if you're pretending. She can sense if your words are floating above you instead of rooted within you. That's why when you say, "I protect my peace first," it must not be an idea. It must be your reality. And here is the truth most never learn. The man who trains his breath, who disciplines his attention, who sharpens his posture and slows his words becomes magnetic without saying much. Women do not remember the man who tried to impress them. They remember the one who made them feel stable. The one who was so aligned within himself that she could drop her mask without fear. The one who asked for nothing but carried everything in his presence. That man is rare, not because others can't become him, but because most never sit long enough in silence to meet themselves. So the question becomes, how do you speak like this? How do you become a man whose words pierce without performance? You train. You wake up before the noise and sit with your mind. You slow your breath until your emotions settle. You listen to your thoughts without chasing them. You begin to see where you've been performing, where you've been leaking energy, where you've been speaking to be liked instead of speaking with direction. And then you stop. You stop trying to impress. You stop over-explaining. You stop adjusting your truth to win her affection. And you begin standing, not in arrogance, but in anchored clarity. This is how you speak a sentence that doesn't beg, it declares. Not loudly, not dramatically, but simply, directly, calmly. When you say, "I'm not here to impress, I'm here to see if this fits my path," it creates space. Space for truth. Space for alignment. And in that space, a woman doesn't feel pressure. She feels possibility. Because now, finally, she's in the presence of someone who is not performing for her. He is performing for his path. And that path is clear. Let her feel the silence before your words. Let her feel the slowness in your eyes. Let her witness your stillness as your strength, not your volume. That is what makes you unforgettable. Not the poetry, not the charm, but the unwavering commitment to truth over performance. And in a world that trains men to be loud, reactive, and overcompensating, your grounded quiet will become the loudest thing in the room. Sacred silence. There comes a moment in every interaction where the wisest move is not to speak, not because you are hiding something, not because you are unsure, but because you understand that energy speaks before language and presence holds more weight than words. Most men do not recognize this moment. They feel it an inner quiet, a natural pause, but instead of honoring it, they panic. They jump to fill the space. They rush to say something clever, charming, impressive. In doing so, they interrupt the sacred space where real connection begins to grow. They override the stillness with noise. They trade depth for attention. But there is another path, the path of the trained man, the man who has learned to trust the silence, to hold it, to breathe through it, to let it stretch without fidgeting, without shifting, without needing to fill it with unnecessary explanation. This man does not dominate the moment he inhabits it. His stillness becomes a message. His calm becomes a container, and the woman across from him feels it not intellectually, but somatically, in her body, in her nervous system. She feels that she doesn't have to perform. She feels that she is not being chased. She feels the presence of someone who is already full, already centered, already grounded. This is where safety begins, not in words, but in the absence of pressure. Not in performance, but in the consistency of presence. Most women are used to being pursued by energy that needs something from them: attention, validation, intimacy. But when she meets a man who needs nothing, who simply is, something shifts. Her guard lowers, her testing subsides. Her feminine energy, which is deeply intuitive, begins to trust. Not because he said the right thing, but because he didn't need to say anything at all. This is why silence is not the absence of communication. It is the highest form of it. It tells her, I am not trying to win you. I am here to see if we are in alignment. It tells her, I am not afraid of this moment. I am not rushing it. I am grounded in it. And when you do finally speak, your words carry gravity. They are not random. They are not rushed. They are placed like stones on water, each one causing ripples that move far deeper than noise ever could. This is how you become unforgettable. Not by talking more, but by saying less, with more presence. To reach this level of stillness, you must train. You must learn to sit with your own energy. You must learn to breathe through discomfort. You must learn to feel the moment without trying to shape it. That means slowing your speech. It means letting go of the impulse to impress. It means allowing pauses to stretch, to breathe, to echo with meaning. You practice this in daily life by listening more, by interrupting less, by observing your own internal patterns. You notice where you usually rush. You notice where your ego wants control. And you resist the urge to fill space just because silence makes you feel exposed. Over time, this practice rewires your presence. You no longer move from anxiety. You move from alignment. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak because there is something true that must be shared. And even then, you choose your words with care. You deliver them with breath, with depth, with authority, not to control, but to clarify. This is the essence of masculine energy, not loudness, but direction. Not speed, but precision. There will be times when someone is waiting for you to speak, when they want your reaction, your approval, your explanation. And in those moments, you will learn the power of restraint. You will learn that saying nothing is often saying everything. That silence is not weakness, it is control. That withholding a reaction is not passive, it is presence. You will learn to see through the illusion of urgency and realize that most situations do not require your words, they require your energy, your attention, your stillness. And in that stillness, something rare emerges. You become the man who does not chase the moment, but allows it to come to him. You become the man who does not perform for connection, but creates space for it. You become the man who can sit across from anyone, friend, enemy, lover, and remain unmoved, not because you are cold, but because you are centered. So if you want to become irresistible, not in a flashy way, but in a grounded, magnetic way, train your pauses. Discipline your tone. Sharpen your delivery until every word you speak feels carved from truth. Let your silence be filled with breath, with energy, with calm certainty. And then, when you do speak, let your words carry the weight of someone who speaks only when necessary. That is how you become unforgettable. That is how you lead, not with noise, but with presence. Detached presence. There is a kind of power that cannot be learned through words. It is not memorized. It is not mimicked. It is earned through silence, solitude, and self-discipline. This is the power of the man who can walk away. Not with bitterness, not with anger, but with certainty. And when a man speaks from that place, his words cut through noise like a blade through fog. They are not loud, they are not manipulative, they are clean, grounded, rooted in truth rather than outcome. Most men never reach this level of communication because they are too attached to her attention, to her reaction, to the illusion of control. And the moment you need her to respond a certain way, you've already lost your clarity. You must understand this. Your tone cannot be free if your nervous system is tied to her response. You may say the right words, but they will be laced with unconscious need, and women feel it. Even if they can't name it, they sense it. The hesitation, the strategy, the emotional leaning. Your breath will give it away. Your body will signal it. And instead of feeling your presence as safe, she feels it as manipulative. Not because you intended harm, but because you entered the moment already compromised. A man who cannot walk away does not speak from power. He speaks from pressure. And pressure, no matter how well disguised, cannot hold space for the feminine to relax into trust. But when you release attachment, when you enter the interaction already whole, everything shifts. You no longer perform. You no longer chase reactions. You no longer build your sentence around how she might feel. You speak what is real for you. You offer your perspective, not to win her, but to see if she aligns. This kind of man does not flatter. He does not bend. He does not sell. He stands, gently but unshakably. His words are not demands. They are declarations of self-awareness. And in that awareness, she feels something rare: freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to stay. Freedom to walk. Because there is no pressure to do either. And paradoxically, that is what draws her closer. True masculine presence does not push. It invites. It creates space without collapsing. And that space is only possible when you are no longer afraid of its emptiness. The man who fears the pause rushes to fill it. The man who fears rejection speaks to prevent it. But the man who trains himself in solitude, who builds his strength alone, who sharpens his breath through discomfort, becomes undisturbed by what comes or goes. He is not careless. He is not passive. He is intentional. But his intention is not control. It is clarity. This is why the most powerful sentences are often the simplest. I don't chase chaos. I speak from calm. I trust alignment over outcome. These are not lines. These are reflections, a mirror held up not to impress but to reveal. And when a woman hears them, she does not feel coerced. She feels held, not in the sense of being contained, but in the sense of being met. She relaxes not because you force safety, but because your presence already lives there. Now, this kind of communication cannot be faked. It cannot be taught in dating courses. It must be trained into the breath, into the nervous system, into the posture. That training comes from one place only: your commitment to silence, your commitment to sitting in discomfort without escape, your commitment to knowing your values so clearly that even in the presence of beauty, of attraction, of intensity, you do not bend, not out of resistance, but out of self-respect. A man who can walk away does not threaten. He does not weaponize distance. He simply recognizes when something is not in alignment and he leaves. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with peace. That peace becomes the most magnetic thing in the room. Because now everything you say carries no desperation. It carries direction. It carries vibration. It carries the weight of someone who knows. My peace is more sacred than this moment. And if you cannot meet me in that peace, I release you with compassion. This is the presence that turns words into impact. This is the posture that turns silence into gravity. And this is the man every woman remembers, not because he said what she wanted to hear, but because he said what was true without needing her approval. And the moment she realized he did not need her to respond, she began responding from a deeper place, not from pressure, but from choice, unshakable standard. There is a kind of sentence that does not beg for validation. It does not dance for approval. It does not adapt to the energy in the room. Instead, it reshapes the room. It shifts the direction of the moment, not because it's loud, but because it's immovable. I do not bend my standard for attraction. That is the sentence, quiet, grounded, and it lands differently not because of the words themselves, but because of the presence behind them. A man who speaks these words must have already done the internal work. He must have spent hours in silence, facing his impulses, resisting his need to be liked, burning through the fear of rejection until only truth remains. Because only a man who is whole can say that sentence without trembling. Most men do not live by this. They shift themselves for beauty. They adjust their boundaries to stay in the conversation. They allow attraction to pull them out of alignment, not because they are weak, but because they are untrained. The moment a woman's presence makes them question their standard, they begin to shrink. Their voice softens not with grace, but with hesitation. Their eye contact drifts not in calm, but in confusion. And what was once solid begins to wobble under the weight of desire. But a trained man, he does not move. He speaks once, clearly, with breath, and he watches. This is what changes everything. Because in that moment, the energy flips. He is no longer the seeker. He is the observer. Not judging, not playing games, but simply watching. Does she rise to meet my standard? Does she soften into truth? Does she align with the world I've built? And if the answer is no, he does not collapse. He does not fight to change her. He simply leaves the space, with stillness, with respect, with silence. That silence becomes the loudest message in the room. It says, "My peace is not up for sale. My boundaries are not furniture to be rearranged. My life is not a playground for untested emotions." When a woman hears that energy, not just the words, but the certainty behind them, something activates inside her. It is not fear, it is not submission, it is remembrance. She remembers the feeling of being near a man who does not chase, a man who sees her but does not need her, a man who holds space not with volume, but with discipline. That kind of presence is rare. It awakens her, it challenges her, it invites her into alignment, not through pressure, but through posture. And now a choice appears. She can rise or she can leave. Either way, the man does not bend. His breath remains steady. His tone remains calm. His standard remains untouched. And that standard becomes a mirror. It shows her who she is. It shows her who he is. And it reveals whether this moment is built on connection or on compromise. This sentence, when embodied fully, changes not just how she sees you, but how she sees herself in your presence. She no longer sees a man who wants her at any cost. She sees a man who walks with value, with clarity, with direction. That direction is what makes her test. That clarity is what makes her trust. That boundary is what makes her soften, not in fear, but in reverence. Because now the space between you has a spine. It has structure. It has meaning. But none of this works if the sentence is said from performance. If you say it to manipulate, she will feel it. If you say it without breath, she will sense the tension. The sentence only holds power if it is lived, if it is rooted in your nervous system, if it is a reflection of how you move through every relationship, not just with women, but with time, with energy, with self. When you live in that clarity daily, your words become rare. And when your words become rare, they begin to matter. So practice the standard before you speak it. Train it in silence. Test it in solitude. Refine it when no one is watching. Because when the moment comes and you will feel it, you will not need to prepare. You will simply speak one sentence, one breath, one truth, and the entire energy will shift. That is presence. That is leadership. That is power. Trained voice. Modern life teaches you to focus on presentation, on performance, on the image. It trains you to ask, what should I say? But very few are taught to ask the deeper question, who is speaking? And this is where most people get lost, especially men who are seeking connection, respect, or influence. They polish their words. They memorize scripts. They repeat phrases from books, videos, and so-called mentors. But no matter how perfect the sentence, if the speaker is untrained, unaware, unrooted, uncentered, it will fall flat. Because energy speaks before language does. Vibration moves before words arrive, and presence either lands or it doesn't. So what truly matters is not the script. It's the structure behind the script. It's the daily discipline that sharpens the voice before it ever reaches the air. If your breath is shallow, your posture weak, your mind scattered, then your words will carry that same vibration. They will sound hollow, even if they are clever. But if your body is grounded, your thoughts are quiet, and your mission is clear, then even a whisper becomes powerful. Not because of volume, but because of truth. Not because of technique, but because of alignment. There is a certain kind of man who speaks once and it echoes. Not because he demands attention, but because his energy commands it. He has trained his voice not by learning tricks, but by walking through silence. He knows the weight of his words because he does not waste them. Every sentence carries memory of hours spent in solitude, of mornings shaped by breathwork, of boundaries upheld through practice. And this kind of sentence doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be poetic. It just needs to be clean. Because what is clean cuts deeper than what is clever. This is why monks speak slowly. This is why great leaders pause before they speak. This is why a single sentence from someone who has trained himself can shift the entire atmosphere. Because people are not just hearing your message, they are feeling your preparation. They are sensing your nervous system. They are being moved not by your mouth, but by your history. If your habits are undisciplined, your tone will shake. If your days are chaotic, your voice will tremble. If your energy is leaking, your message will too. So the training is simple but not easy. You must learn to breathe, slowly, with control. You must learn to speak only when necessary, only with intention. You must learn to move without hurry, to sit without fidgeting, to hold space without collapsing. These are not just physical disciplines. They are energetic anchors. They tell the world, this man is not here for performance. He is here to observe, to decide, to lead. And that leadership begins before any words are spoken. If your mind is always racing, go to silence. If your speech is always reactive, go to breathe. If your presence is inconsistent, go to ritual. Let your mornings sharpen your voice. Let your training shape your posture. Let your solitude be your teacher. Then when the moment comes, when she asks the question, when the world challenges your values, when chaos calls for clarity, you will not scramble for the right thing to say. You will simply respond, slowly, clearly, from a place of stillness. You don't need to talk louder. You don't need to memorize more lines. You need deeper roots. And those roots are built in the quiet hours, when no one is watching, when your body and breath become allies, not enemies. If your roots are strong, your presence becomes undeniable. You can walk into a room and say nothing and still shift the air, because now your silence speaks, your stillness speaks. And when you finally open your mouth, the world listens. Let others practice performance. You practice presence.